Hi, I'm Scott Parkman, the Artistic and Executive Director of American Century Music. We're thrilled to be giving a program here at the Worcester Art Museum on October 14th in conjunction with the Kennedy to Kent State exhibition. American Century Music is dedicated to performing the works of 20th century American composers, and, like the exhibition, for this program we will be focusing on music from the 1960s. The program has 4 pieces, 2 string quartets, one by David Diamond, his string quartet number 7, and another by Leon Kirchner, his quartet number 3 for strings and electronic tape. There will also be 2 works for solo instrument, 6 pieces for cello by Roger Sessions, and Violin Phase by Steve Reich, an early example of musical minimalism. I chose these pieces for several reasons, including they actually come from a very small portion of the middle part of the 1960s, from 1963 to 1967, and they show several of the important trends and currents in American classical music at that time. Take, for example, Leon Kirchner's Quartet number 3. It combines the traditional string quartet, so 2 violins, a viola, and cello, with electronic sounds that Kirchner created for the piece. The electronic sounds are an equally important member of this ensemble and create a really interesting juxtaposition between the traditional string quartet and some very interesting sounds that he created at that time. If you think about John F. Kennedy's charging the country in 1961 with putting a man on the moon, which we accomplished in 1969, there were a lot of technological advancements that happened during the decade. These technological advancements also included the realm of electronics. And American composers, many of them, wanted to try to incorporate some of these advancements in electronics into the more traditional realms of musical composition. In this Quartet number 3 for strings and electronic tape, Kirchner created some sounds that to us now might sound rather dated, but if you imagine of sort of what NASA mission control might have looked like in the 1960s, some of these electronic sounds will be very much of that time. Another interesting treatment of electronics will be the Violin Phase by Steve Reich, where the violinist records 3 times the same material into sort of tape loops, and they play over each other, hence the name Violin Phase. They phase in and out, and it makes for a really interesting aural experience. If you think about visual minimalism, say the works of Mark Rothko or Ellsworth Kelly, where the viewer is sort of drawn in over a period of time into this hypnotic trance into these visual works, the same experience happens aurally with musical minimalism, whereas you're listening and the tape phases over each other over a 10-minute period, you're sort of drawn into a very interesting hypnotic state. Minimalism, which still is very popular in the United States, began in the 1960s, and I wanted to include this piece of Steve Reich to show you an early example of musical minimalism. The other 2 works are more traditional in the sense they don't use electronics and they use traditional forms. The 7th string quartet of David Diamond and the 6 pieces for cello by Roger Sessions. They use, however, a musical language that is very much of the modernist spirit of the 1960s. I encourage you to visit the exhibition Kennedy to Kent State prior to coming to our concert on October 14th. Many of these images are going to be emblazoned into our psyche as Americans, even though the images themselves and the events that they capture happened some 50 years ago. But by overlaying these familiar images with some of this musical material, which I will guess for many of us will be very unusual and unfamiliar, I think you will find some interesting parallels of the creative currents that were going simultaneously in the 1960s. It will make for a very interesting intellectual and musical experience. For more information about American Century Music, please visit our website, www.americancenturymusic.org. I look forward to seeing you on October 14th. Thank you for listening to this introduction, and see you then.